In this video, we're diving into an exciting project, building an indoor shower for a van conversion. Whether you're a full-time van lifer or just love the idea of a mobile bathroom, this video's got you covered. We'll walk through the key decisions to make your shower durable, lightweight, and leak-proof. I'll break down the pros and cons of framing options like metal studs, extruded aluminum, or wood studs. We'll also compare waterproofing solutions like Curdy board and Red Guard. Plus, we'll explore finishing materials for the inside of your shower like classic tile, waterproof wall tiles, or FRP. Stick around as we share how we build a shower step by step, and we'll share tips on how to make your van conversion dreams become a reality. Let's get into it. So you can see here, I've got this shower all framed in. So I want to talk first about the materials. So you can see here that we're using metal studs. And we've done different things. We've framed showers out of, we're using wood studs. We've used extruded aluminum, 10 series, but the 1x2 inch bars. And then you can see this one is using just the metal studs. So I think that using the metal studs is really the best way to go. One, it's plenty strong once you attach it to the floor and to the ceiling and to the walls. Once you cover this in the material, we're going to be using 1/2 inch plywood to cover this. It's going to be really strong. Now, extruded aluminum is nice. It's stronger than the metal studs. What we found is that it becomes really hard to attach all of your panels and things to it. You have to drill into the slots in the extruded aluminum and put screws in it in order to hold that. And it's just a lot harder to attach things. The metal studs are also a lot lighter. So when you're using those 1x2 inch extruded aluminum bars, and then you're bracing and everything, it got really heavy. I was actually surprised how heavy it was. And so the metal studs are super light, and I think they really are the best option. Now, the other option you could go with is just using wood. My issue with that is I feel like in an accident, wood framing is just going to splinter and break. Also, it's quite a bit heavier, and then it is susceptible to moisture. That could be coming from a leak inside the shower, but even just the extreme conditions that a van is subjected to, the hot and cold, the humidity, moisture, things like that. I really don't like to use materials like that. When we are using wood for our structure, we like to use the Baltic birch plywood because it's just a lot more stable than, like, say, a 2x4. 2x4s warp and split and things like that. So the metal studs are dead straight. They're really easy to use. So let's talk about how you go about laying out your shower and then framing it. So we're using down here a metal shower pan. This one is from Tetravan. They sell a metal shower pan. We've had shower pans custom made before. We've used shower pans from other companies. There's a lot of options out there, and most of them are really good. The biggest consideration is to be able to get the drain hole where you need it in order to be able to put the drain through. You don't really have a lot of options for where your drain's going to be. It's going to be just wherever the pan is and then straight through the floor, unless you're raising your shower up off the floor by a couple of inches. Then there are some options for drains where you can route a hose and then go down through the floor. But for the most part, you're going to want to have as much height as possible. So you're going to want to set the shower pan and put the drain directly through the bottom of the van under it. So you need to find a place where you've got an opening. You have to get under the van, measure things out, figure out where you have enough room that you can put the drain. Okay, for a Sprinter, this shower pan that's 24 by 30 inches with the drain right in the middle works fine. You do, as far as there's a beam running this way, it stays away from that, and then you just have to kind of move it north to south to figure out where you're going to be able to go through the floor to get the drain in. Okay, we have used ABS shower pans in our first 2 shower builds. They're quite a bit less expensive. I think they're around $200. Lippert makes them for RVs, and they have good reviews and things like that. But what we had is on both of the builds that we use these shower pans, the shower pan ended up cracking. But once I had a couple of those crack, I said never again. So we researched out shower pans, decided we were gonna go with stainless steel, and we've done that on all of our builds since then. Now the shower pans, obviously stainless steel is a lot more money than a plastic pan, but once you've got your pan in all your walls, it's nearly impossible to pull the pan out to replace it without tearing the whole shower apart, tearing the walls out and things like that. So a little extra insurance, spending a little bit of extra money to get a good shower pan is worth it.
Hey guys, are you a DIY van builder? That's how we started, and we love to support the DIY community. So we've created some resources that have helped in our journey, and we've made them available to you. We've got a free spreadsheet with all of the materials we use in our conversions. That's taken hundreds of hours to research and that we've tested and proven out. We have a download with the van build sequence that we use in all of our conversions. Plus, we've got other products on our website that tons of DIY builders have found helpful. Check out the links in description below for more details.
So the way that we set the shower pan is we figure out where we can go through the floor, and then we drill a pretty good size hole. I think about a 3-inch hole is what we put, big enough for the whole drain to fit through. Okay, so it's quite a bit shallower than just the drain. We want to be able to get up under there, however the drain attaches, have room to screw it in, so the hole is about a 3-inch hole in the floor. It also gives us a little bit of wiggle room to move the pan around. Then once we drilled the hole, we take a piece of this. This is called Kerdi board, K-E-R-D-I. It's made by a company called Schluter, a German company. They make a lot of different waterproofing materials for showers and bathrooms, and it is expensive. A 4x8 sheet of this stuff is, I think, about $130. We usually use 2 of those sheets in a van, so you know, it's not cheap, but it's the best material that we found. Super light, it's foam, it's got a waterproof membrane on the front and the back. There are other options out there, other types of foam. I think Hydrobond makes one, and there's a few others so you can find at your big box stores. Most Lowe's stores do carry the Kerdi board. Also, Floor & Decor carries it, so you can find it there. So what we do is we cut a piece the same size as the shower pan. So in this case, I think it's 24 by 30. We drop it in there. We get under the van and trace out the hole for the drain, and we cut that out. And then we glue this down to the metal of the floor of the van. Okay. Now, I've talked about this a lot, but the best adhesive that we've found for gluing anything in a van is Loctite marine adhesive. The stuff is so strong. It dries kind of to a rubbery texture, and so it gives in the vibration. It won't, through the vibration of the van, it's not going to crack and break off. It's always going to have that elasticity, but it's so strong. You glue something into the van, and like we glue all of our furring strips so that we don't get any squeaks or rattles. And if we end up having to tear one of these furring strips out, the only way to do it, we have a few screws holding it in place, but if you try to pull that out, it's going to tear the wood apart before the marine adhesive comes off. So we do put marine adhesive on the bottom of this, and then also where the hole is, we go all the way around it with a really, really thick bead of the marine adhesive. So then we set it down, that marine adhesive is going to seal off the hole so that no water can get inside the van. Okay, then once we've got that down, laying on the floor of the van, then we put marine adhesive on that, and then we just set the shower pan down on top of this and glue it down. Okay, so this Kerdi board is glued to the floor, and then the shower pan is glued to that. Okay, so that's the shower pan. Then, as far as the framing, now I will back up and say, I don't actually glue all that down until the framing's all done, okay? But you set the shower pan in and use that kind of for the dimensions of your shower. Then we pull the pan out so that it doesn't get scratched and dinged up while we're building. And then once it's all framed, then we go ahead and set it into the shower and glue it in place. Okay, so as far as the framing goes, we start with the bottom. So there's 2 different types of these metal studs. Okay, the first are the studs for all the uprights. And you can see here that it kind of curls around on the ends, and that kind of reinforces it, so it just makes it stronger. And then the ones that we use on the top and on the floor don't have that curl over, and they're just slightly wider, and it allows for these to fit inside of it, okay? So you want to make sure you get both. For a shower like this, 24 by 30 or 32, we use 2 of these, the channels, and then I think we used about 8 or 9 of the uprights of the regular studs, okay? And these come in a 2.5 inch or a 3.5 inch. So 3.5 inch would be the same as a normal wood stud. 2.5 inches, an inch narrower. That's what we use because we just don't need the thickness and the width in our walls like you might want in a house. So the first thing we do is we lay the channel on the floor, and it's super important that you get this dead nuts square. The whole shower needs to be super square. And that's going to be really important when you come to the end and you're finishing your shower with wall tile or whatever you're using. You want to have everything square. Otherwise, your tiles are going to have to be cut at angles. You're going to have gaps you have to fill with caulk and things like that. So you want to start with a really good foundation. Okay, so we put a square along the wall of the van and make sure that these two coming this direction are perfectly square to the wall. And then we get this one and just lay it across the front. Now, I've talked in other videos that we always strike a line down the center of the van. So we'll also want to make sure that this distance on both ends is exactly the same distance. So we know that this is parallel to the length of the van, and then that these are perpendicular to the van, okay? We take a little strips of 3/8 zip board. It's green. You can get it at the big box stores. And we just cut that 2.5 inches wide, the width of the channel, and we glue that down first, exactly where these are gonna go. Then we put these channels on top of it. Then we screw the channels down into that zip board to get our base. And I'll double and triple check and just make sure that everything is square. I want it square on the inside. I want it square to the walls. I want it parallel to the van. Make sure that your base is exactly straight, okay? First step. Then you're gonna start with your uprights. We wanna make sure that we've got places to attach this everywhere. So you can see we bring up an upright here, up just to the height of the furring strips on the ceiling. And then we do one in the back, as far back as we can go. We can't go all the way to the wall without bending it. We just do one straight one in the back. So we push it back as far as we can to this edge and then drop it straight down so you can measure from here to here and the bottom to there, make sure that the distance is the same. Okay, so then we'll create this side and that end side, and then the front, screw them all together. And then we, again, want to make sure that everything is dead square. And so we'll put squares on everything. And as far as this wall being perpendicular to the floor, this wall being perpendicular to the floor, check everything. And then once you have everything exactly right, you can just screw these channels up into your furring strips in the back and the front to lock everything in place. Go around. Again, double, triple check. Make sure that your interior corners are all square, that your walls are all perpendicular to the floor. And then once you've got that, that's 90% of the battle, is making sure that all of these things are square. I cannot overemphasize how important that is to getting a really clean, finished look. Okay, now the next thing we do is we got to run our plumbing. And so I've got our plumbing system. When I'm doing a shower, I always make sure the plumbing is on the driver's side if the shower is going to be on the driver's side, which is typically where we would do it. Okay, so you can see here that my pipes have to pass through the stud. And obviously we don't want pipes rubbing against sharp edges of that. So they make these bushings, and I'll link to these in our Google sheet. But these bushings, I think it's like 1.25 inch hole that you drill through the stud, and then you pop this in, and they actually kind of expand to put the 1/2 inch pipe through. And then when you put them in, they kind of clamp that down. And so those hold that pipe secure and keep it off of the metal. Super important to do that, okay? So we've got one of those bushings for our hot and our cold line. And then we just bring them up, and we've got the shower mixer here. We have one that we really like, and again, I'll link to that in our Google Doc. You're gonna run your hot and cold to that, and then up to here. Now, one thing you wanna consider is the height that you put this shower head. So we're going to be using this shower head. This is one we really like because it turns the water on and off completely when you want to. And so you want to make sure that you're going to be able to take this handle on and off without it hitting the ceiling. Okay, so determine your height by the type of shower head. Make sure you have that ahead of time, and make sure you don't put it too high. You don't want to put it so high that you can't remove this, or if it doesn't fit, it's going to hit the ceiling. Okay, so we just determine our height based on that. Okay, so the other thing we have to run through the studs are wires, because we're going to have a switch right here, and we're going to have a light inside the shower in the ceiling. So you can see, again, we've run these through the metal studs, and again, you want to protect these from rubbing against the sharp metal edges. So these metal studs actually have kind of a rectangle cut out in them, and they make these little bushings that have flat edges that will pop into those slots, and then you can run your wires through those. Okay, so you're going to run your electrical and your plumbing through there. So once you have your electrical and your plumbing all ready to go, then you're going to attach your waterproofing boards. Now, again, there's a couple of different options you can do. In our first vans that we did a 1/4-inch plywood, and then we coated the whole thing in red guard, the seams, the tape on the corners and everything, painted the whole thing. It's a big mess. I don't recommend that. Yeah, it's a little bit cheaper than using the Curdy board, but it is a mess and a lot of work. So the other consideration is your door opening. So you could make the entire thing a door, but what we like to do is have the wall come in a little bit. That gives you a place to like hang towels if you want. You could put your light switch out on this side, and the opening, we usually do about a 20-inch opening. So really that's plenty wide. This is gonna have a toilet sitting in it, so we always put the toilet towards the front facing this way, and this little wall kind of gives a little bit of privacy if you're not going to close the door, if you just want to pop in there. And so nice to do a little bit of a wall. Again, we do the finished opening of this is going to be about 20 inches. That's our door. We're going to use a Nautilus sliding door. So I think this opening is like 21.5, so that when we put our 3/4 inch on either side, it's going to be 20. Okay, doesn't have to be exact because the Nautilus door will expand to whatever size we need, but that's what we do. So once that's all framed, then you're going to start attaching your Curdy board. And I usually start on this side because this side does have some holes that you've got to put in it, and it's just easier to do this side. So I do these 2 side panels first. So your piece is going to come from this edge right here to the back wall. Okay, and it doesn't have to be exact. Come within a 1/2 inch of the wall, because then this piece is actually going to cover up that edge. So that's why we do this one first and this one. So this one will cover the edge, because this side can be a little bit tricky to scribe it or fit it and get it just exactly tight to the wall. But basically in a sprinter, your wall is straight up to here, and then it tapers in a little bit here, and then from right here it tapers in more. Okay, I think it's about a 5-degree taper here, and then about a 15-degree taper here, but don't quote me on that. I don't remember exactly what it is. But basically you can start with cut your piece to the full width, which is about 24 inches. And then you're just gonna slide it in there, and then you're just gonna kind of take off a little bit here and a little bit at the top to get it to fit in there. Again, as long as you're within a 1/2 inch of the wall, you're going to be fine. Okay, then you can take that same piece and just move it over here, and I just kind of push it against, make sure that that fits right, and if it does, then I just kind of push it in against here, and it'll leave marks on the board, and then I just cut out for my shower head and for my mixer. Okay, just there. Then you can go cut that second piece out, and it should be exactly the same as the first piece. Then the way that we attach these is we use marine adhesive. Don't use any screws, because if you use screws, which you can do, but then you've got to basically put tape over those and waterproofing, so there's no chance of water getting through those holes behind the walls. So it's just a lot easier to not put any holes in, and there's no really reason to. You don't need to. So we're just going to attach those with the marine adhesive, and we'll clamp those in place and leave them overnight. Okay, then for the back is actually super easy. What we do is we cut one piece that's tall enough to do this whole thing in the width of the whole shower. Let's just say that your shower is 32 inches, and then these are a 1/2 inch each, so your opening is gonna be 31 inches. I would just cut a piece to 31 inches and then cut it to the height of this whole thing and put it against here, and then it's just gonna slide. You're gonna have these pieces here, and it's just gonna butt right up to this, okay? Now, you can either glue it directly to the metal, or what we do is we'll take a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, and we'll glue that to the back wall, and then we'll attach our Curdy board to that. And so it's really easy to just attach this just with the glue. Now you do have this angle on the bottom. Your board will pretty much just kind of flex to that little bit of a taper that's right here. Like I said, it's less than 5 degrees. This one at the top, you're probably going to need to cut it. So what we do is we figure out where from the bottom up where that taper is, and then we'll just score this board across the back about 3/4 of the way through the board, and then it will just bend. It will actually kind of break there, but your waterproof membrane is still intact, and then you can just have a little bit of an angle up to the top. Okay, and again, you don't have to go all the way to the top because you're gonna have a ceiling here, but you want to come within about a 1/2 inch of the top. So you've got your two sides, you've got your back in there. Then the last piece is just would put a piece right here. You can probably just use the scrap because it's 48 inches wide. The piece you cut off of this is going to be wide enough for this, and you can just put this here, just draw a line down the edge, cut it, and you glue that one in place, and that is all of your waterproofing for your shower. Now you are going to want to waterproof the seams, so you're going to have going down the back. On each side, you're going to have a seam. So you're going to want to use that. Schluter makes a caulk that is waterproof. And if you have a pretty tight line, you can just use the caulk there. If it's a little bit, if you have more gaps and things like that, then I would recommend they're using their Schluter tape, or I think they call it Curdy band. Yeah, Curdy band. And you can, using that caulk, put that down and then put that Curdy band tape, which is like a 4-inch wide waterproof tape, same material that's on the cover of this, and you can waterproof all of your inside corners with that. Now, the reason we waterproof everything is just really for insurance. The tiles that we're going to use are waterproof, and so no water should ever get behind these, but if it did, the water would run down this board and then into the shower pan from behind. So now we come to the finishing of the actual walls of the shower inside, and there's really 3 options that you could consider. One is FRP, which is a fiberglass reinforced material, that plastic that you basically cut to shape and just glue in. It's not the nicest thing. So if you go into a bathroom at a gas station, that's usually what they have on the walls, just that white plastic with kind of a little texture to it. Cheap way to go, easy to put in, but it's not very nice looking. Another option is using actual tile. We do not do that, but there are other builders that do, and some that have had success with it and like it. So the downfalls I see with that is, 1 is the weight. 2 is it's a lot more difficult to put those tiles in, a lot more time consuming to cut all the tiles and everything. And then the vibration. It just concerns me that with the vibration, you might have the mortar that's setting those tiles crack. You could use glue, but again, that's a lot more tedious. And again, with the weight that tile adds, I just would not go that way. The other thing about tile is if you use traditional grout is not waterproof. And so that's why they make these shower walls waterproof, is so that the water can go through the grout, run down the wall, and then out the bottom. Okay, but with the way that we do it, you don't have to worry about that because our tiles are completely waterproof. So these are the tiles that we use. These are made by a company called Palisade, and I'm going to link to these in our Google Sheet. This one's cut. They're actually quite a bit bigger. I think they're like 15.5 by 24 or 24.5. They're pretty big tiles, which makes it a lot easier to put them in. And they interlock sort of like a tongue and groove floor. So these are just going to glue onto the Curdy board. Now, Palisade recommends using a Loctite adhesive. I've actually found that the marine adhesive works better than the adhesive that they recommend, but really you could go with either one. But again, I would start with these walls going down the side. And again, because you've got to cut these tapers, if you do these first and then put this against it, you have the thickness of this, which is about a little more than 1/8, maybe 3/16 of an inch, to cover any imperfections, okay? And so start with these two walls. You're going to cut these pieces, and if you framed your shower correctly and got it all square, then all your cuts should be pretty straight. Now, what I like to do is I want this piece right here. I want a seam to be right where the bend is in the board. Okay, and the reason for that is this is pretty stiff, and to get this to bend to that curve and have the glue set is kind of difficult. But if you have a seam right there, it's easy to just bring your wall straight up and then a seam and then just angle this top piece in. So I figure out where that is, and then I measure down, and then I'll cut my bottom piece off so that when I lay that, and I start at the bottom, but when I lay that, it's going to come up and it's going to have a seam right there. But again, I'm going to do these two first, but I want to determine where that seam is going to be so I can cut the bottom of all of my first layer off at the same spot. Okay, then I'm just going to adhesive those in, and then what they want you to do is run a little bead of silicone caulk along all of the interlocking edges. And that just does a little bit of extra waterproofing. So I would lay this one in, then before I do the next course on top of it, then I'd put a little bead of silicone on, and then I put that next one in. I just work my way up on the two sides, and then this back piece, put that in, and cut those pretty tight so that they kind of wedge in and push against the two side pieces. Then everything's gonna be super tight. You're gonna have super tight seams and just a little bit of caulk to finish it, and it's gonna look like a real professional job. Now for the ceiling, there are different ways you can do it. We have done it with tile before, but I don't love that option. What I really like to do is just use the ceiling material. So this van, like a lot of our vans, is gonna have natural wood slatted ceiling. We'll just continue that over into here. But over here, we use a canvas material for the backing because you're going to have gaps in the slats and you're going to be able to see through them. Over here, we don't like to use that canvas because it's a wet area. And even though the canvas is waterproof, we use a piece of 1/4-inch hex ply, and we attach it to the ceiling, and then we just attach our slats to that. And with the normal slats, we just use Rubia Monocoat, which is a pretty water resistant material. But for a little extra insurance in the shower after the Rubia Monocoat, we do spray on a couple of coats of polyurethane. Now, the last thing is then finishing the outside of the shower. So the way that we do that is we'll just use 1/2-inch Baltic birch plywood panels, and we'll attach one on this end, one on this end, one on the front, across here, and then we'll put a header and a footer right here, and we'll cut it to the width of this channel. And we like to use pressure treated 2x4s that you can get at a big box store. We cut it down to fit into this channel on the top, and then on the bottom, go into the bottom, and then we're going to attach PVC board. So it comes in a 3/4-inch thick board, and we buy it in pretty wide, like 6-inch pieces, and then we'll rip it down to the width of the door after we have the foam and the tile on so that it's that width. So we'll do a piece of that PVC board down either side, one across the top, one across the bottom for the threshold. And on the bottom, we like to hang that piece wider than the actual threshold, so if is water when you're stepping in and out of the shower. On this side, it's either going to drip back into the shower or it's going to drip outside of the shower, but it's not going to run down the walls and underneath. Okay, so we trim out this whole thing with the PVC board, and then you can attach your Nautilus door, and that's just done with an adhesive. You just tear off the adhesive, attach it to this side, and then you just attach the other piece to this side, and really easy to do. Now, when you order a Nautilus door, they are, I think, a standard width. I think it's like 30 or 36 inches, but you do have to tell them what height you want. We always get ours at 67 inches. 67 inches allows you enough room to make a little bit of a threshold, a little bit of a header up here, and you can still have a gap at the top of your shower. If you think of a lot of showers in homes, the shower doesn't come all the way to the ceiling. It ends someplace, and then you have a little gap, and that really just lets a little bit of air flow out. So we find that 67 inches for your Nautilus door is a good height, leaves a little bit of gap there. Once we have all of our outside panels, then we'll just trim it out with whatever trim you're using. It could be a hardwood, could be a painted trim. We'll just put trim around all the doors across the bottom, and that's how we finish off the shower. So hopefully this video helped you if you're considering doing a shower in your van build. It really is not that hard. If you want to see other videos about van building, van life, products, tools, things like that, then be sure to subscribe to the channel. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Jeff with Thrive Vans. Thrive on. See ya.